Daniel Reed was the kind of man who spent more time talking to machines than to people. He lived alone in a small trailer beside the old Nevada observatory where he worked. His nights were filled with quiet hums of radio receivers, blinking lights, and endless cups of cold coffee. The world outside forgot he existed, but Daniel didn't mind. He loved the silence, the sky, and the mystery that came with every signal his antennas caught. For years he had been listening to the universe. Sometimes the receivers picked up distant thunder from faraway stars. Other times it was just the usual background noise of space. But one night something changed. At exactly 2:14 a.m., his main monitor lit up with a repeating pulse. Not random, not natural, but steady and deliberate. A short sound, then a long one, then another short. The rhythm was too perfect to be a mistake. Daniel leaned closer, adjusting the knobs with shaky fingers. He replayed the signal over and over again. His mind raced. It almost sounded like a message, a heartbeat in the middle of space. He grabbed his notebook and began writing down the sequence. Numbers, pauses, frequencies. After an hour, he realized the pattern repeated every 37 seconds. It was like someone was knocking, patiently, from the other side of the universe. The next morning, Daniel tried to share his discovery. He sent the data to the university lab and called an old friend, Dr. Elaine Moss, who worked for the National Space Agency, but everyone laughed softly or brushed him off. "Daniel, you've been awake too long," one colleague said. "It's probably a weather reflection." Even Elaine, though kind, told him to rest. Yet Daniel couldn't rest. He knew what he'd heard. That night he returned to the observatory early. The desert air was cold, the sand shining under a silver moon. Inside the lab, everything was still. He powered up the equipment again, heart thumping with quiet excitement. When the signal came again, stronger this time, he felt a chill travel down his spine. He recorded the data, then watched as new numbers appeared on the screen. They formed coordinates, Earth coordinates, and beneath them, a short sequence of tones that translated into 4 simple English words when decoded through his program. "Prepare to meet us." Daniel stared at the message until the room seemed to shrink around him. His first thought was fear. His second was awe. Someone, somewhere, was not only speaking but knew exactly where he was. For the next few days, Daniel worked nonstop. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating properly, lost track of time. He filled notebooks with figures, graphs, and sketches of strange waveforms. Whenever exhaustion tried to take him, the thought of that message kept him awake. Who are they? What did they want? 3 nights later, his computer froze. Every monitor went black. The power surged, then cut off completely. He checked the breakers, nothing wrong. Then a sharp metallic sound echoed outside the trailer, like a heavy object landing softly on sand. Daniel opened the door and looked out. The desert was silent, but there was a faint, bluish glow far beyond the rocks. It flickered once, then disappeared. He wanted to follow it, but fear held him still. Instead, he wrote down every detail in his logbook before exhaustion finally took him. The next morning, a black van arrived at the observatory gate. 2 men in plain suits stepped out and flashed identification cards too quickly for him to read. "Mr. Reed," one of them said politely, "we're from the Department of Advanced Research. We'd like you to come with us to discuss your recent findings." Daniel blinked, unsure what to say. Before he could answer, one of them handed him a folder. Inside was a printed image of his decoded message, "Prepare to meet us," with government markings in the corner. They had been watching him. Daniel didn't resist. He packed a few papers, locked the observatory, and climbed into the van. The desert road stretched endlessly ahead as the vehicle sped toward the horizon. None of the men spoke. Daniel's mind was full of questions, but silence felt safer than asking. After several hours, the van entered a restricted zone surrounded by high fences. At the end of the road stood a cluster of hangars, their walls shining like dull steel under the sun. A guard waved them through. Inside, Daniel saw strange vehicles, smooth oval shapes that didn't look like anything humans built. One of them pulsed faintly as if breathing. The air smelled of ozone. They led him into an underground corridor. Every step echoed softly against the metal floor. The men spoke briefly to a woman in uniform who wore no insignia. She nodded once, then turned to Daniel. "Mr. Reed, you've been selected for a project that requires your expertise. We believe your signal is connected to something we've been tracking for years. Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to ask what she meant, but the woman opened a door before he could speak. Inside was a chamber filled with gentle blue light. In the center stood a transparent cylinder, and inside it a small object floated, glowing faintly. It was a fragment of metal unlike anything he had seen, its surface covered in smooth-moving lines like flowing water. "This," the woman said quietly, "arrived 15 years ago. We couldn't trace its origin until your signal matched its frequency." Daniel stepped closer, mesmerized. The patterns on the metal seemed to react to his presence, glowing a little brighter. The woman watched him carefully. "Tomorrow," she said, "you'll meet the one who sent the signal." He looked up, startled. "You mean someone is here?" The woman only nodded. Then she pressed a button, and the door slid shut between them. Alone in the faint blue light, Daniel tried to steady his breath. He could hear his heartbeat echo in his ears. A thin beam of light spread slowly across the chamber floor, forming symbols that danced and rearranged themselves. Then, for a brief moment, a tall shadow appeared inside the light, graceful, calm, and watching him. Before he could speak, the light vanished, leaving only darkness. Daniel stood there, trembling, not from fear but from realization. He wasn't the only one listening to the universe. Someone, or something, had been listening back. Outside the hidden facility, the desert wind carried a quiet whisper, almost like the same rhythm he had first heard on his receiver. A short pulse, a long one, then a short. A sign that the real meeting was yet to come. Daniel Reed woke before sunrise. The soft hum of the underground facility was strangely comforting, yet the thought of what awaited him made his stomach tighten. He had spent nights imagining this moment, but nothing in his life had prepared him for meeting a being from beyond Earth. The hallways were long and lit with soft, white lights that reflected off polished metal floors. The walls hummed faintly as if the building itself were alive. Daniel followed the two plain-suited guides in silence. He tried to appear calm, but his hands shook slightly. Every step echoed in the empty corridor, making the moment feel heavier. Finally, they reached a wide chamber. Its ceiling curved like the inside of a giant dome, and in the center, soft, shimmering light moved in strange patterns. Daniel stopped at the threshold, mesmerized. This was unlike any laboratory or observatory he had ever seen. Here, science and something beyond science seemed to meet. A voice, calm yet commanding, filled the chamber. It was soft, musical, and carried a rhythm that felt like it matched his heartbeat. "Welcome, Daniel Reed," the voice said. He froze. The words were English, but there was something alien in the way they flowed. From the far end of the room, a figure emerged. She was taller than any human he had met, with a presence that seemed to fill the chamber. Her skin had a soft, luminous quality, almost like moonlight on water. Her eyes glowed faintly, and her hair flowed behind her like a river of silver. Daniel could not tell if it moved with her or if it simply floated, weightless in the air. She walked toward him gracefully, each step silent. Daniel felt as if he were both small and unimportant, yet deeply honored to stand in her presence. "I am called Elizara," she said. "I am the one who sent the signals you received." "You listened. You answered." Daniel swallowed hard. You mean the signal? You sent it?" His voice sounded small even to him. Elizara inclined her head slightly. "Yes, you are the one we chose because you understand patience, curiosity, and kindness. The qualities needed to bridge our worlds." Daniel's mind raced. He had expected many things. An explanation, a demonstration of technology, even a message from a distant civilization. But not this, a person, a being capable of thought, emotion, and judgment. Elizara stepped closer, and Daniel noticed her eyes were like mirrors, reflecting not only his image, but also something deeper, something unspoken. "Daniel," she continued, "I have watched your work. Your dedication to knowledge, your care for others, your willingness to listen. You possess what many of your species lack, understanding without fear." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of relief and awe. He wanted to speak, to ask 1,000 questions, but the right words refused to form. Then her tone shifted subtly. It was calm but firm, carrying a weight that made him straighten his posture. "Daniel Reed," she said, "you must marry my daughter." The words hit him like a wave. He stumbled backward slightly, unable to fully comprehend what he had just heard. Mary, her daughter? I, I don't understand, he stammered. You mean, as in a real marriage? Elysira's gaze softened. The term you use is only partially accurate. This is not about romance, at least not at first. It is about trust, alliance, and the future of two worlds. My daughter, Elira, needs someone she can rely on. Someone who understands humanity and can help her understand it too. Daniel tried to process it. His life until now had been simple. Work, study, quiet nights at the observatory. Suddenly he was expected to consider a role in something far bigger than himself, something almost unimaginable. Why me? He finally asked. Why not someone else? There are scientists, diplomats, so many people. Elysira tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable yet kind. Because you listened. Because you cared. Because you did not dismiss the unknown out of fear. Many others would have ignored the signal or worse, tried to control it. You did not. That is why you were chosen. Daniel's mind spun. He wanted to argue, to protest, to say he was not ready, not capable. But looking at Elysira, he realized she did not expect excuses. She expected understanding. Tomorrow, she said, you will meet Elira. She is waiting to know the human who responded to her call. You will speak. You will learn. You will decide together what your path will be. Daniel nodded, though his head felt heavy with thoughts. He wanted to ask more, but Elysira's presence filled the room, leaving no space for words. She turned slightly and walked toward a glowing panel, pressing it lightly with her hand. The light shimmered and faded, and she disappeared as quietly as she had arrived. For a long moment, Daniel stood alone. He looked around the chamber, taking in the soft glow, the silent hum and the faint pulsing of energy beneath the floor. The entire room seemed alive. His heart raced. The guides returned and led him back to his quarters in the facility. The room was simple, with a bed, desk, and a small window showing the desert night outside. Daniel sat by the window, staring at the stars. He could not sleep. Every detail from the chamber replayed in his mind. Elysira's words, her eyes, the calm authority in her voice, and the shocking command, marry her daughter. He thought about the signal again. The long, deliberate pulses, someone reaching across the vastness of space to find him, to trust him, to ask him to step into something greater than he had ever imagined. By dawn, Daniel had made a decision. He would meet Elira. He did not know what would come next. He did not know if he was ready for the responsibility or the challenge, but he could not turn away. Something told him that this meeting was important, not just for him, but for everyone. That morning he walked back through the long, quiet corridors, past the shimmering chamber, and toward the room where Elira waited. The air was filled with anticipation, as if the building itself knew that this meeting could change everything. Daniel took a deep breath. Beyond the door lay not only the daughter of the alien queen, but also the first step toward a connection between worlds. He could feel the weight of history pressing softly on his shoulders, but he also felt a spark of hope. The door opened, and for the first time, Daniel stepped into a world he could barely imagine, a world where trust, understanding, and courage would guide the way. Part 2 ends here, setting up the introduction of Elira and the first interactions between Daniel and the daughter of the alien queen. The room Daniel entered was bathed in soft golden light that seemed to come from nowhere. It wasn't bright enough to hurt the eyes, but it made everything shimmer gently, giving the space a calm, almost magical feeling. At the far end stood a figure he had been imagining for days, and yet nothing he imagined could have prepared him for this. A young woman stepped forward. Her skin glowed faintly like polished marble catching sunlight. Her hair flowed past her shoulders, silver with hints of pale gold, and her eyes. Daniel could not look away. They were luminous, not just reflecting light, but seeming to hold knowledge, emotion, and something curious all at once. "You must be Daniel Reed," she said softly. Her voice was melodic, calm, and confident, yet carried a gentle warmth. Daniel nodded, unsure of what to say. Yes, that's me. I'm Daniel." She smiled faintly, and the tension in Daniel's shoulders loosened slightly. "I am Elira. Mother sent you here because she believes you can help us. Help me understand your world, and perhaps help your world understand mine." Daniel swallowed. The word help didn't seem enough. What did she mean? But looking at her, he realized she wasn't speaking in riddles. Elira truly wanted connection, a bridge between two very different lives. They sat on low benches made of smooth, glowing material. Elira's posture was relaxed, but Daniel could sense her careful observation. She studied him with quiet curiosity, tilting her head slightly as if listening not just to his words but to his thoughts. "Mother said you listened to the signal," she began. "You didn't ignore it, you didn't fear it. That is why you were chosen." Daniel nodded, his mind still processing. I did hear the signal, yes. But I never expected this, to meet you. To meet anyone, actually." Elira's smile widened slightly. "I have waited a long time for someone to respond. Many ignored me. Many were afraid, but you were willing to try." Daniel felt a strange mixture of pride and humility. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions, yet he also felt that speaking too fast might break the fragile connection forming between them. Elira continued. "Mother's words were strong. She said you must marry me. I know it may seem strange, sudden, and even frightening, but in our world this is a bond of trust not only for me but for both of our peoples. The marriage is a symbol, yes, but it is also a beginning. It is how we can share knowledge and understanding." Daniel exhaled slowly, trying to calm his racing thoughts. "So, it's not like the marriage I know on Earth, it's more like an agreement, a partnership?" "Yes," Elira said. "Exactly. But it is also personal. Mother believes the person who listens with their heart, not just their mind, is the right one, and that is why she chose you." Daniel felt a wave of responsibility. This was bigger than science, bigger than curiosity. This was about trust, about building a connection between two completely different lives and two completely different worlds. Over the next hours, they talked. Not about politics, not about war or power, but about simple things, their daily lives, hopes, dreams, fears. Daniel learned that Elira loved watching the stars, learning about human inventions and reading stories of Earth's history. She had a quiet, gentle sense of humor that made Daniel laugh softly, despite the strangeness of the situation. And Daniel told her about the observatory, the quiet nights alone with the stars, the signals he had been listening to for years. He spoke about his work, his friends, or the few he had, and the dreams he had held since childhood. Slowly, a bond began to form. It was not instant love, it was trust, understanding, and curiosity. They were learning each other's language, not just of words, but of thoughts, hopes, and hearts. Elira tilted her head and asked a question Daniel had never considered. "Do you ever feel alone even when surrounded by others?" Daniel paused. No one had asked him that in years. "Yes," he said quietly. "Even in the city, even in classrooms, I've often felt alone, like the world doesn't see you even when you try to show yourself." Elira's eyes softened. "I understand. My world is similar. I am not like others here. They have expectations I cannot always follow. I feel alone too sometimes. That is why I needed someone who could see me, truly see me." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest. For the first time, he understood why the signal had reached him. Not because of science, not because of logic, but because of connection. Someone across the stars had needed him to notice them, to respond with care. Hours passed, and soon the golden light of the chamber shifted, marking the passage of time. Daniel noticed small changes in Elira's expressions, curiosity turning into trust, hesitation turning into openness. She was learning him as much as he was learning her. "You are different from anyone I've met," Daniel said finally. "Not because you're not human, but because you really listen. You really try to understand." Elira smiled faintly, looking away for a moment. "And you are patient. You do not fear what you do not know. That is why I believe we can succeed together. Mother believes this bond is necessary, but I believe it too, because we are learning from each other." Daniel's thoughts drifted back to the observatory, the blinking lights, the quiet nights. How small that world seemed now compared to the vast possibilities in front of him. And yet, he realized, it was the same world, just larger, more mysterious, and full of surprises. By the end of the day, Daniel understood something important. The so-called marriage was not a command to obey blindly. It was a choice, a beginning of trust and mutual understanding. And the person waiting for him was not just a symbol of an alien civilization. She was real, curious, and kind. As he left the chamber, he felt a strange peace. The first step had been taken. The walls between Earth and Elira's people were beginning to thin. Not through force, but through conversation, patience, and shared curiosity. He knew the next days would bring more questions, more challenges, and perhaps doubts. But Daniel felt ready. He had listened before, he had answered before, and now he would continue, not just as a scientist, but as a bridge between worlds. Outside, the desert wind carried the faint echo of the signals he had heard for so long. Only now the signals no longer felt like a mystery. They felt like an invitation, to connection, to understanding, and to a future neither of them could yet imagine fully. The days following Daniel's first meeting with Elira were both exciting and confusing. He spent hours in the alien facility, learning not only about their technology but also about their customs, their ways of thinking, and their values. Every corner of the place held new wonders, walls that could change colors to reflect moods, floors that felt soft yet strong, and tools that responded to thought as easily as touch. But as the marvels grew, so did the weight of responsibility. Daniel was aware that he was no longer just a scientist or observer. He was now a bridge, a living connection between Earth and another civilization, and with that role came expectations he had never imagined. The alien queen Elysra summoned him one evening. Her presence was as calm and commanding as the first time he had met her. She motioned him to sit across from her at a smooth, glowing table. "Daniel," she said, her voice carrying quiet authority. "You have learned much about our world and our daughter. You understand her curiosity and her heart, but your role will be tested. Trust is not enough. Understanding must be proven." Daniel nodded, trying to appear confident. "I am ready. I want to do whatever is needed." Elysra inclined her head. "Soon you will meet members of our council. They will question you, challenge you, and observe your intentions. Some may doubt your sincerity. Some may doubt your courage. You must remain honest, patient, and true to your purpose." Daniel felt the weight of her words. It was no longer a private meeting between him and Elira. The fate of relationships between two worlds might rest on how he handled these encounters. The following day, he was led to a large chamber where representatives of the Alien Council waited. They were diverse in appearance, some taller than he could imagine, others shorter, but all radiated intelligence and presence. Daniel felt a twinge of nervousness. Their gazes were not hostile, but they seemed to see right through him, reading his intentions as if they were open books. Daniel Reed, a council member, spoke, her voice firm yet calm. "You have met our daughter and observed our ways. Tell us, why do you think you are suitable to form this bond with her?" Daniel took a deep breath. "I don't know if I'm suitable in the way you think," he said honestly. "But I have listened, I have tried to understand, and I am willing to learn more. I believe that if we share knowledge and trust, we can build a connection that is meaningful for both our worlds." The council was silent for a moment. Then another member, a figure with luminous markings across his skin, spoke. "You speak with honesty. But what about fear? Humans are often afraid of the unknown. How will you handle doubt, danger, or mistakes?" Daniel thought carefully. "I have been afraid many times," he admitted. "I am afraid now, but I believe that fear is not a reason to avoid connection. It is a reason to be careful, to listen, and to act thoughtfully. I will not pretend I have no fear. I will act despite it with respect and care." The council murmured softly among themselves. Daniel could feel the tension, the evaluation. Finally, the first member nodded. "Your words are sincere. We will continue to observe, but you have passed this initial test." Daniel exhaled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. He realized that this was only the beginning. Trust could be gained, but it could also be lost. Returning to Elira's side after the council meeting, Daniel felt a sense of relief. She smiled at him warmly, and he saw pride in her eyes. "You were honest," she said softly. "That matters more than anything else." "I only hope it is enough," Daniel replied. "There is so much at stake, not just for us, but for everyone." Elira reached out, placing her hand over his. "I believe it is enough, and I believe in you." Despite her words, Daniel knew challenges were not over. Earth itself remained a question. Would the governments understand? Would scientists accept a bond with someone from another world? He thought of his colleagues, the skeptics, and even his few friends. None of them could truly comprehend what he had experienced. One evening, as Daniel walked through the observation deck of the facility, Elira joined him. They looked out through the transparent dome at the stars above. "Do you ever think about Earth?" she asked quietly. All the time, Daniel said. I wonder if they will understand why I'm here, why I've chosen this path. I worry that fear or misunderstanding could undo everything we are building. Elira nodded. Fear exists in all worlds, but trust and understanding can overcome it. That is why we must be patient and why we must act carefully. Daniel smiled faintly. You are wise beyond your years. I am learning from you as much as I hope you are learning from me. She smiled back, her luminous eyes reflecting the distant stars. And that is the beginning of our connection. Not only between you and me, but between our people. Every word, every choice, every act of patience matters. Over the next days, Daniel worked closely with Elira. They shared knowledge, explained human ideas and traditions, and learned about her world's customs. They laughed together at small misunderstandings, marveled at each other's discoveries, and slowly built a bond based on trust and mutual respect. But even as they grew closer, Daniel felt the weight of the Queen's order. It was a reminder that this was not only about personal choice, it was about responsibility. Every action he took could ripple outward, affecting not only his life but the future of Earth and Elira's people. One night, as they watched the desert wind swirl in quiet patterns below the observation dome, Daniel realized something important. He was not being forced into this marriage as a command. He had a choice, a real choice, and that choice carried power. It was not about fear, obligation, or expectation. It was about trust, understanding, and willingness to build a future together. Elira noticed his thoughtful silence. What are you thinking? She asked. That I am not afraid of this, he said finally. I am ready to face whatever comes next. Not because it is easy, but because it is right. Because it matters. Because I trust you. She smiled gently, placing her hand over his. And I trust you. That is what matters. As the stars shone above them, Daniel felt a sense of calm he had never experienced before. Between the challenges of two worlds and the expectations of both humans and aliens, he realized that trust, understanding, and patience would guide them. And as long as they had that, nothing else could break the bond forming between him and Elira. For the first time, Daniel felt that he was not just a visitor in an alien world. He was a part of something larger. A bridge between two civilizations, a symbol of connection, and a witness to a future that neither Earth nor Elira's people could yet fully imagine. Part 5. The union that changed everything. The day had come. Daniel Reed stood outside the chamber where the ceremony would take place. The air was calm, carrying a faint warmth that felt like encouragement. Beyond the doors, representatives from both worlds were gathering, their eyes filled with curiosity and cautious hope. Daniel felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, but a deeper feeling of purpose steadied him. He glanced at Elira, who waited just inside. Her posture was calm, yet her eyes sparkled with anticipation. She wore a simple flowing garment that shimmered faintly, catching the light with every small movement. There were no grand crowns or decorations. This was not about display or power. This was about trust, understanding, and connection. When Daniel stepped through the doors, the room fell into a soft, expectant silence. The council members from Elira's world observed quietly, while human scientists and diplomats stood respectfully, trying to understand the gravity of the moment. Elira smiled as he approached. You came, she said softly. I did, Daniel replied, offering a small smile. I wouldn't be anywhere else. The chamber was bathed in light that seemed to come from every surface at once, soft and golden. A gentle hum filled the air, almost like a song, though it contained no words. Daniel felt the energy of the place resonate through him. It was a reminder that this moment was not just for them, but for everyone watching, for both worlds. Elysira, the alien queen, stepped forward, her presence calm and authoritative. Daniel Reed, Elira, she said. You have both spent time learning, understanding, and building trust. Today is not only a bond between you two, but a promise between our peoples. This union is a symbol of what can be achieved through patience, honesty, and care. Daniel and Elira nodded, their hands brushing together naturally. It was not a gesture of command or expectation, but of mutual respect. They were choosing this path together, aware of the responsibilities it carried. The ceremony itself was simple. There were no extravagant rituals, no overwhelming displays of power. Instead, Daniel and Elira spoke words of intention, words that expressed their commitment to understanding, supporting and learning from one another. I promise to listen, to learn and to care, Daniel said. I will do my best to understand you, your people, and your world, and I will act with honesty and respect always. Alira's voice was soft but firm. I promise the same. I will listen, learn, and share knowledge. I will act with patience, care, and trust. Together we will build a bridge between our worlds. As they exchanged their promises, the room seemed to glow brighter. Council members and humans alike felt a shift, an unspoken understanding that something important had just begun. It was not only a personal union, but a connection that could change the future. After the words were spoken, Elisera nodded approvingly. You have chosen wisely. Now step forward together as partners, as allies, and as friends. Daniel and Elira walked side by side to the central part of the chamber. They paused, looking out at the assembled groups. Daniel could feel the quiet admiration in the human observer's eyes, the cautious hope in the alien council's expressions. He realized that even in silence, his actions were sending a message. Trust was possible, understanding was possible, and fear did not need to dictate the future. The ceremony ended with a simple gesture. They clasped hands, and light shimmered gently from their joined palms. It was not magical in the way of stories. It was symbolic, a visual reflection of unity and cooperation. The glow spread through the room, touching everyone present. Afterward, Daniel and Elira stepped aside, away from the formalities. The hum of conversation returned, but it was lighter, filled with hope and curiosity rather than tension. Daniel looked at Elira, feeling both relief and joy. We did it, he said softly. Yes, she replied, smiling. And this is only the beginning. Over the next weeks, Daniel worked closely with Elira and her people. They shared human knowledge, ideas about Earth sciences, and cultural traditions. In return, Elira taught him about her world, the ways they observed the stars, how they communicated without words, and the philosophies that guided their society. Each day brought new discoveries, laughter, and small moments of wonder. Back on Earth, Daniel's colleagues gradually came to understand his choices. Some were cautious, some skeptical, but all were intrigued by the possibilities. Scientists began asking questions, forming teams to collaborate. Governments showed interest in learning from Elira's people, seeking cooperation rather than conflict. Daniel realized that trust could indeed ripple outward. His decision to listen, understand, and act honestly had created not only a personal connection but a bridge between civilizations. One evening, as Daniel and Elira watched the sunset from the observation deck, she spoke quietly. Do you ever think about what might have happened if you had ignored the signal? Daniel shook his head. I can't imagine that. I would have missed this, missed you, and more importantly, I would have missed the chance to build something that matters for so many others. Elira smiled, resting her hand lightly on his arm. It is strange, isn't it? One small choice, one moment of listening, and it changes everything. Daniel nodded. Yes, and I'm glad I made it. In the months that followed, Daniel and Elira's partnership grew stronger. They were not only allies, but friends, learning from each other every day. Their collaboration led to new ideas, shared technology, and exchanges that benefited both Earth and her people. Years later, when Daniel and Elira welcomed their first child, the world, human and alien, celebrated quietly and respectfully. The child was a symbol of unity, curiosity, and hope. Their laughter filled both homes and hearts, reminding everyone that understanding and care could cross even the vastest divides. Daniel often reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple signal from the stars. He had listened, he had answered, and he had stepped into a future that once seemed impossible. And as he watched his family, the stars above and the quiet glow of the alien facility nearby, he understood the truth of it. Connection, trust, and understanding were far stronger than fear, distance, or difference. In the end, it was not the title of marriage, nor the command of a queen that mattered most. It was the choice to listen, the courage to act, and the willingness to learn from someone unlike himself. That choice had changed everything, for him, for Elira, and for both worlds, and for Daniel. That knowledge brought a simple, unshakable joy. He had found his place among the stars not as a lone human, but as a bridge between worlds, a partner in hope, and a witness to the future being built together.